Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our first Learn Live session. Plan and prepare to develop AI solutions on Azure. My name's Anna. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our moderators to answer. Our session is recorded. It will be available to view on demand within 24 hours right here on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Lee, Song, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, Anna. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to our first Learn Live. So this is a series that we're doing as part of Microsoft AI Skills Fest. So I'm Lee Stott. I'm a Principal Cloud Advocate, and I'm really thrilled to welcome you all to this Microsoft Learn event. We're talking about planning and preparing to develop AI solutions for Azure. So this is the first part of a multi-part series. And today we're going to walk you through how to set up everything you need to build AI solutions using Microsoft AI Foundry. Microsoft Azure AI Foundry is a really extensive resource for building AI solutions, and I'm excited to be joined by Mintot Song, and I'd like Song to introduce himself. So over to you, Song.
Oh, thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. I'm Song, a Microsoft Learn's student ambassador and the maintainer of open source project called Co-op Translator. It's built using Microsoft Azure AI Services, and it automatically translates open source documentation, including both Markdown files and images, into multiple languages. I'm excited to explore this topic with all of you today.
Thanks, Song. So today we're going to be covering how to get started with Azure AI Foundry services. And this is really the foundation to build any AI solution on the Microsoft platform. As I said, this is really a part of a multiple set of exercises in relation to building AI solutions and building agent-based solutions. So we're starting today on April the 15th. Next week, we'll be looking at the fundamentals of actually building agent services on Azure. On the 29th, we'll look at developing agents and agent services using the Azure Agent Service. On May 6th, we'll be looking at how to integrate custom tools into your agent. On the 8th of May, we'll be looking at how to embed semantic kernel and use semantic kernel to orchestrate those agents. And then our final session on the May 13th is about how to orchestrate multiple agent solutions using semantic kernel. So we're taking you from the very beginning all the way through to building advanced Microsoft AI solutions. So our focus today is really around planning and preparing AI solutions. This is the URL to the Microsoft Learn module that we'll be using today. So everything we're going to talk about and share today is also included in this Learn module. It will take you about 45 minutes to an hour to complete that module. So if you're interested in this, go to aka.ms/plan-azure-ai/development. And this is really just a key focus to get you started. As you've seen from the chat, we've got some amazing moderators in the channel. These are some of our Microsoft Student Learn ambassadors. So again, please say hi to the team. They're in the channel to help you with any questions. Again, as presenters, we want to take some of these questions back and really have that in-depth discussion with you as the audience and help you get started on your AI journey. Again, this is live. We are live and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So again, please do leave questions in the chat. We will ask for some questions as well from the audience. And we also have a little bit of a quiz session at the end of this to test your knowledge as the audience to see, have you been listening to what we've been talking about? And, you know, what have you learned from today's session? So let's get started. First of all, we'd like to welcome you to the Microsoft AI Skills Fest. So we've got 50 days of learning all the way up to the Microsoft Build Conference. Again, you can get things like digital badges. So we'd love to all redeem your digital badge for taking part in this activity and register on the AI Skills Fest to get more information around building AI and agent-based services. Again, we want you to share your thoughts and questions. This is really important to us. We want you to learn and share your experiences. And we have dedicated AI Discord communities available, and we will share links for those communities that you can continue our conversation discussion throughout this entire series, and also your developer journey as you start to build and develop AI solutions on the Microsoft AI platform. So let's look at the agenda for today. This is what we're going to be covering. We'll start with a quick introduction and an overview to what AI is. We'll then explore the specific Azure AI services and Azure AI Foundry. And then we'll talk about some of the tools and the SDKs that you can utilize as a developer to get started. After that, we'll talk about some important topics, such as responsible AI. So this is just because we can build these AI solutions, should we be building these AI solutions? And also, when we build these AI solutions, how do we evaluate and test if these AI solutions are responsible? We'll then have a bit of a knowledge check, just to gain, what have you learned from today, and have some feedback. And then we'll wrap up with a summary of all the overviews of what we've covered today. So let's get started, first of all, with an introduction to what AI is. So AI has really been growing over a number of the last few years, and it's really transforming everything we do and how we interact with software, how we build it. And generative AI has been merely that big driver in the last 2 years. In particular, generative AI is really unlocking a whole new level of creativity. It's allowing us to do things that we never thought were possible before. So the ability to ask a large language model a prompt, or to create an image, or to actually rewrite an email, or to create some new content for us, is all really been only available in the last 18 to 22 months. And again, this is rapidly changing on a daily basis as new models and new services come online. We also have tools now that can analyze data, generate images, and also even generate code. And Song's been part of this movement around generative AI. And as a maintainer of the Corp Translator, he's got some real-world, real-life experiences of how you can build these generative AI solutions. And the use of generative AI is really redefining what's possible for developers to build new services, tools, and applications, and also for users to actually consume these technologies. And to support this transformation, we've developed Microsoft Azure AI Foundry. This is an integrated platform that gives developers everything you need to build, manage, and scale AI solutions. So in this session, we're going to look at how to get started with Azure AI Foundry, how to start your first project, how to create hubs, and then how to accelerate your project as you go through building solutions. So let's look at what AI is from a Microsoft perspective. If we look at this from a services perspective, let's talk about the real core of AI. AI is really about building software that can think and can act like a human. This means things like recognizing patterns, learning from data, making decisions, and even generating content. On the slide, we've got a various set of different services that Microsoft offers. We have our generative AI services. So with generative AI, we have a set of large language models and small language models that can create text, images, and even code. So if you're using things like GitHub Copilot, you now have the ability to have an LLM associated with that, where you can prompt and get code back. Agents and automation are really changing the way businesses are dealing with generative AI applications. So this is how we can assess situations for their own and take appropriate actions. Again, we've got tools like GitHub Copilot agents. We have agents as automated agents available on websites or within Microsoft Office, or again on different services, to be able to facilitate those questions and interactions. And again, what's really key about this is what we call natural language processing. And this allows machines to understand human language, whether it's written, so you're typing it, whether you're speaking it as well. And then we've got other services like computer vision, which allows the computers to use machine learning based models to analyze those images and interpret those images and provide contextual information back, whether it's a document, whether it's text, whether it's another image. And all these services are really powered by the fundamentals of machine learning. So all these services rely upon those pure mathematical algorithms that are built up the basis of machine learning concepts and technologies. So whether you're building smart information, robots, automated systems, in-car driving, entertainment services, you can utilize all these different services, but this is the foundation behind all of these platforms. So if we look at the definitions of capable AI, we need to think like what's actually happening behind the scenes. The whole goal of being an AI-focused environment is to allow applications to behave more like a human, interpreting various inputs, outputs, and generating those intelligent responses. Again, this all really starts with those machine learning models. So this is a solid model of how you're creating your algorithm, the training data sets, and then that input and output from those models. And this is really where we've got now with generative AI and large language models. They allow you to actually consume those models either pre-built, so you're using a model off the shelf, or you can fine-tune a model to make it business specific, or you can actually go back and start to develop and build your own machine learning models. Again, what we're trying to look at is that data interpretation. So it's really about how we interpret data from all those different formats and be able to give a good response back. So you'll hear a terminology called multimodal. And this is where you can give a model different types of format. So whether you're giving it textual input, or whether you're giving it voice input, or you're giving it a mixture of the both. And this is how the response is then generated by the AI based on that input. So it's analyzing the types of input. It's then creating that seamless interaction and experience. And what we're trying to strive for within these solutions is that experience being as human as possible. So it's fluent, it's conversational, it's grounded, it has coherence, it makes sense, and it has fluency. So the sentence structures are correct. And again, this is where we are now with the rate of change within technology. Is we're now advancing to this stage where we're getting better and better at building these solutions. So if we look at our focus of this series, our series is all around the Azure AI Foundry services. And Azure AI Foundry, where we're going to be focused on, is really on the Foundry itself, which is the core setup of our environment. So this is where we have what we deem as a project and a hub environment. This is our space where we undertake our work and our resources. We have something called the model catalog. So this is all the models that are currently available. And there's over 1,800 models available to utilize. There's things like OpenAI, there's things like Llama, there's things like the 5 small language models. And what we want to do when we build these solutions is choose the best model. So we have things like evaluation and benchmarking built into these solutions so we can pick that best model. We then want to build an agent. So within Microsoft, we have a new service called the Azure AI Agent Service. And this is both a visual design tool, so you can use a UI to design the agent, or you can use a code first tool using Visual Studio Code. So we give you the opportunities of building those agents. And this is really for building your first simple single agent. We want a very easy process for you to get started. As you progress learning these development tools and the SDK and the technologies, we want you to progress into semantic kernel. And this is really about how you then take single agents into that multi-agent scenario. And again, one of the key scenarios that you'll hear about from an agent solution is a thing like a travel agent. If you think about, you want to book a holiday abroad, you need someone who understands flight data, you need someone who understands hotels, you need someone who understands excursions, you might need to understand restaurants or facilities near the hotel. So, you need to think about your architecture of your agents in terms of how you build that. Do you build it as a single agent, or you build it as multiple agents who are specialists in those different areas, and then orchestrate those agents to work together to provide that end response? And this is what we're going to work up to throughout this course, is getting to that solution where you can have multiple agents who are specialists in that area, who then can pass to the next agent, can pass to the next agent to have that complete response. So we're going to really learn how to build these dynamic multi-agent experiences that are going to be really the foundation to every application going forward in the future. So if we look at some of the capabilities of how we build these AI solutions, generative AI is really, think about that chatbot. That's the most experiences most of you've had with generative AI. It's that thing that can generate answers, or it can complete your code, or it can write you an email, or it can check your Word document. Agents are those smart assistants. They take an action, undertake a task, and give an outcome back. So again, going back to an example of I want to book a meeting, they could schedule a meeting, create a booking in your calendar, send a reminder to someone else. Computer vision is about really analyzing those things around us in real time. So the ability, so anybody who's like driven in a Tesla or one of these new cars with AI features, they're using computer vision to understand their environment. So they're looking at road signs, they're looking at traffic, etc. And this is using computer vision. We then have speech. So the ability to enable applications to recognize human speech. So the ability to talk to your mobile phone and ask it to do a task, the ability for the phone to talk back to you and have that interaction. So you've moved from that text to speech, and now we can have that multimodal where we bring text, speech, and vision together. And again, all this is really based around that natural language processing of being able to really give that response back in a human readable, understandable manner. And also it brings in abilities like summarization and being able to respond back in real key, concise and suitable manners. And the way we try and look at this from an AI perspective is what we call evaluations. And this really looks at key focus areas like the groundedness. So how close is the response from the AI to our baseline resources, to our baseline knowledge? So is it grounded? You hear sometimes a term called hallucinations, where models make up things. We don't want models to make up things. We want them to be grounded in truth. We also want them to be relevant. So we want the machine to bring back relevant content based on the question we asked. And we also want it to be coherent. So how easy it to understand? If I ask the question in English, does it give me back in English? If I ask the question in Swiss, does it bring that, or in French, does it bring back those languages naturally? Or is it broken in terms of that response back? Again, the real other key one is that information extraction. So when we're building these models, if we take a large language model knows everything about everything. It's been trained on the data of the world at that specific time and point in moment. So again, you'll see models which have date stamps and times on them. That just basically means they've been trained on this set of data. Now, that might be great for most tasks, but if you're working in a specialized industry where you're using things like technical acronyms or terminologies or specialized systems, you want that information to be grounded on your business knowledge. And this really is where we start to think about these information extraction services. So you'll hear concepts like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where we add data to the model to reground the model. We want that new data to be grounded in that model. So when you ask the question, you get relevant data. There's then opportunities like fine tuning, where we take the model and retrain the model on new data. And that's really where you're building these specialized models to be very industry focused on a specific task or outcome. So that's really a basis to what we want to do from an AI developer's perspective. We want to build applications that use generative AI. We want the agents ideally to be multimodal, so the ability to take vision, speech, text, and also grounded in information that we want to learn about. So next, Song is going to walk us through what AI services are and how to utilize these AI services.
Oh, thanks, Lee. Now let's dive into Azure AI Services. These are pre-built product-ready APIs that make it easy for developers to add AI capabilities into their applications without needing deep expertise in machine learning. Whether you are working with language, vision, or speech text, Azure AI Services offers scalable and reliable solutions that are quick to integrate and secure to deploy. So let's break this down a bit further. Microsoft Azure offers three main layers of AI capabilities. First, Microsoft provides a scenario-based service like content safety, document intelligence, and AI translator, which solve specific business problems right out of the box. And next, there are customizable AI models such as vision, speech, and language, This allows you to either use pre-trained models or fine-tune them with your own data. For instance, you could train custom vision to recognize your own product. So when the model sees one, it knows it's product A from your company. And finally, there's Azure Machine Learning, a comprehensive platform for building, training, and deploying custom ML models. Let me show you how these Azure AI services come together in real-world open source project called Code Translator. This project is a part of Microsoft Azure open source ecosystem, and it's designed to automate the translation of open source documentation like AI agent for beginners, making it more accessible across different languages. Code Translator works with two main types of input, markdown files and images that contain text. Here's how it works. For markdown files, we use Azure OpenAI to translate the content into multiple languages. And for image files, we first extract the text using Azure AI Vision, then pass that text to Azure OpenAI for translation. Finally, the translated content, whether from Markdown or images, is automatically saved into a structured folder system organized by language. Here's a real example of how Code Translator works in practice. On the left, you can see the original English Markdown content taken from the Phi Cookbook, which is an open source learning resource built around Microsoft Pi family of language models. And on the right side is the automatically generated Spanish version, translated not only from the Markdown content, as you can see, but also from the text inside the image. This shows how Azure OpenAI and AI Vision work together to provide complete multi-language accessibility even for technical images. So now let's talk about how you can actually deploy Azure AI services in your own environment. In this slide, I will walk through the deployment options and explain how Azure AI services work when used in practice. Later in this session, I will give a demo for showing exactly how to deploy and configure these services in Azure AI Foundry. So in this session, first you can provision each services as a standalone resource. Whether you are working with translator, vision, or speech, you can choose the services that best match your app's requirements and configure them individually. Second, most of these services include a free tier, which is perfect for getting started without any cost. This makes it easy to experiment, prototype, or even run small-scale apps before scaling up, so you don't have to worry about the initial cost. And finally, each resource provides its own secure endpoint and authorization keys. That means your applications can safely and securely access the services you are connected. Now, let's talk about multi-service Azure AI solutions.
So, Sung, just before you go on, there's some great questions. So let's just jump in some of these questions. So lots of people asking questions about like data privacy. So let's just start with some basics again. So Azure AI Foundry is a wrapper. It's a platform of all the Microsoft AI toolings and services. So we have AI services, which include things like computer vision, so what we just talked about, computer speech, so the ability to speech service, and then we have our Gen AI services. So this includes things like the Open AI services. So lots of you probably use like ChatGPT and OpenAI. They are actually part of our generative AI services within AI Foundry. But as Microsoft, we offer lots of other models. We offer 1,800 models. So you might not want to use OpenAI GPT-3 or 3.5 or 4 or 4.0 or 4.1. You might want to use something like Llama, or you might want to use NVIDIA, or you might want to use the Phi models. So we have this huge choice. So what we're trying to do with AI Foundry is provide you a single resource or a single tooling platform that allows you to build multiple different AI solutions. Again, AI Foundry is a platform, so it's just ai.azure.com. All you need is a Microsoft Azure subscription to utilize it. And again, one of the other key facets about this is the services sit within your Azure subscription. So when you create an OpenAI or a Llama or a Mistral model, that model sits within your Azure AI subscription. So when you give content or context to that model, so a prompt to that model with specific data on, that model is not going out to the general public. That model is private to you and your organization. So again, you know, that model is secure in its environment. Also, what Microsoft does is any model which ships to the model catalog, it goes through some security and validation testing. So we actually have a certification on those models that these are trusted models. And again, that's why we don't have as many models as Hugging Face, but our models go through that verification to make sure that the code and data that they've been trained on is trustworthy. Okay, sorry, Song. Sorry, I just wanted to just address some of those. But great questions, everyone.
Thank you, Lee. That was a great question. Okay, now let's talk about multi-service Azure AI solutions. These are especially useful when your application needs to use several AI capabilities like language, vision, and speech together. Instead of setting up and maintaining each service separately, you can provision them as a single unified resource. This makes it much easier to manage, monitor, and scale your AI solutions. It also allows for faster development because all the services are tightly integrated and ready to use together. No need for extra configuration. So when you are working with Azure AI services, it's so important to understand that not all services are available in every region. Some features might be restricted to specific geographics, and that directly impacts how and where you can deploy your solutions. You also need to consider quota restrictions. Even if a service is available in a region, your subscription might have limitation on how many resources you can provision there. So always double check. Azure provides a helpful product availability table, which you can use to verify what's available across regions. And finally, for services like Azure OpenAI, model access is also region specific. To be sure to consult the model availability table in the documentation before planning your deployment. And following up on regional availability, when working on Azure AI Foundry, it's especially important to understand that availability can vary by region. This is called regional variability, and it can directly affect what features are available to you depending on your geographic location. So as part of planning your solution, always verify which services and capabilities are supported in your target region before you start development. To make this easier, Azure provides feature availability resources, including detailed documentation that shows much Foundry features are accessible across different cloud regions. This will save you a lot of time and avoid surprises later when you're trying to deploy your Azure AI solutions. Before we wrap up this section, let's briefly touch on pricing for Azure AI services. First, these services are usage-based, which means you only pay for what you use. That gives you great flexibility to manage your cost based on your actual consumption. There's also service-specific pricing. Some services might change based on the number of transactions, others by the compute used. To help with planning, Azure offers clear pricing documentation for each service so you can make informed decisions early on. And of course, there's the Azure pricing calculator. It's an essential tool for estimating costs before you deploy, and it's super helpful for budgeting. With that, let's now shift gears and dive into Azure AI Foundry, where Lee will walk us through what Foundry is, highlight its key features, and explain how it supports building, managing, and deploying intelligent solutions at scale.
Cool. Thanks, Song. So yeah, so what we're going to do is just focus a bit on Azure AI Foundry. There was some great questions in the chat about, different services. Again, what I want to try and do with this session is give you that complete breakdown of what the AI Foundry architecture is. So this is a quick overview of how we see Microsoft AI Foundry working. So on the left-hand side, we have our different development environments. So we have things like Copilot Studio. So if you want to develop low code or no code solutions, Copilot Studio is your way to go. And you're an M365 Office user, it's a perfect solution. We have Visual Studio Code. So if you're a primarily software developer who's used to using an IDE, we expect you to be using Visual Studio Code with our APIs or SDKs to consume the Foundry services. So you're actually writing code against an API and building a solution. Again, we want you to be utilizing GitHub to do all your source control. Again, you've got opportunities now, things like agents within GitHub and GitHub Copilot to make your life as a developer much easier. And again, we want you to be utilizing the Azure AI Foundry SDK to utilize and consume all those services which are available under the AI Foundry. So in the right-hand side box, let's look at how this is sort of constructed. First of all, we start with our model catalog. That's the first decision you need to make as a developer. What model am I going to build my generative AI solution with? And in our catalog, we have over 1,800 models, and we have lots of different types of models. So we have foundational models, we have open source models, we have task-based models, we have industry models. We also have things like the model benchmark, where you can literally say, this is a type of work item I want to do. What are the best models to utilize? And it will give you the best models in a chart, and you can compare costs, performance, etc. So we choose our model, and we then decide what services we want to consume that model with. So we have things like the Azure OpenAI service. So the Azure OpenAI service is a standard gateway to all the different models using OpenAI's APIs and access layers. We have the Azure AI Search. So this is when we talked about that RAG scenario of bringing custom data into our solution. If you don't understand how to build a vector database and take all these different types of data to build a vector database, we can use Azure Search and just bring this data into Azure Search. So we say, we want these PDF files, we want this Excel file, we want this database, we want this SharePoint site, and Azure Search will create that vector index for us automatically. So then we can start to query with our model into that data and then validate, is it grounded, is it coherent, is it relevant, etc. We then have our agent service. So this allows us to build agents on that data and on that model. Then we have our content safety, which wraps around all this. So this is really the security and the protection of not only our AI system, so the ability to stop people trying to jailbreak your agent or your LLM services, but also how you present data and information back to the end users. So does it have confidentiality protection or copyright protection? So if somebody asks to do something that they shouldn't be able to do, does the AI content safety filter block that out? So things like sexual explicit content, harmful content, or even types of content itself. So like going back to that copyrighted piece. Then we have our different operations we want to complete. So we have evaluations. Now, if you're building any solution, you want to test and evaluate that solution. So is this solution I have built, does it work? How effective is it? So I might be a developer and go, yeah, I built this amazing solution. But as a company owner or business decision maker, I want evidence of that evaluation. How well does your model perform on a scale of 1 to 5 against these following benchmarks? And they might be the standard benchmarks of groundedness, coherence, relevance, but they might also be industrial models. So things like Glue or Blue, which are industrial metrics. Then we want to think about our customizations. How do we want to customize this model? Do we want to go to a certain platform? Do we want this model to be deployed on an edge device that sits at the bottom of the ocean? We want to think about the governance. So what's that data structure? Who has permissions to this? Who can change it? Who can add to it? And of course, we want monitoring. How well is this solution performing? Does it need to be updated? Is it performing at its maximum optimacy? And then we have the observability piece, which wraps all this together into that observability management portal, where we can see all these different metrics. So we can actually manage and operate the model under what we call Gen AI, LLM ops. So we can see how well does this model actually work and how well is it working once it's in production. So the key things that we need to think about when we're using AI Foundry is the cost components of this. We need to think about how much is this solution going to cost us and what quotas do we get? And this is really based on the types of subscriptions that you have. So things like the Azure free trial will give you base level quotas to do certain aspects of work. And again, there is a process of being able to request for additional quotas to hire your quota remits to then be able to build better or bigger applications and solutions. Quotas are really key when you actually think about the number of tokens that are utilized in building a solution. So you'll see lots of the tokens in thousands. So it usually says something like 10K TPM. So that's tokens per minute processing. So what you want to be able to do is look at some of the samples and then say, how many quotas do I need? What type of subscription do I have? How can I go through that process of requesting additional capacity? And where does that capacity need to sit? So as Song said before, we have different capacity in different regions. So you need to look at where you're setting up your environment to ensure you have the right content across those regions and have that scalability of being able to grow your capacity in the regions you select. So now let's look at the way Azure AI Foundry is constructed. We think about AI Foundry in this concept of hubs and projects. So if anybody's done any work with Azure before, we talked about a concept of a thing called a resource group. So a resource group was really a logical grouping of all your different Azure resources into a single group which could be managed. Because we're moving to an AI solution which could be multifaceted, so there could be different team members, there could be different groups working on this, we've moved to what we call the hub and project model. So imagine a hub as the top level organization resource. So if you're at university or an organization, this is your home institution or home organization. It's a top level container. So all developers in that organization have access to the hub. Now, you don't want every developer in your organization to have access to every model and every project. So what we do is define this thing called the projects. And a project is a project. It's a work item where you can have unique members into that project. So everybody's a member of the hub, but only me and Song have access to project 1. Anna and Claire have access to project 2. So you can start to define your hubs and projects within your organization, which then give you delegated control. They give you boundaries of enforcement from a security perspective. And they also give you cost management from those border protections. So again, people can actually build 2 fixed budgets in their projects. They can only consume resources that you said are appropriate for their project. And again, that allows you to manage the resources much more effectively than just saying to people, here's a resource group, go away and do what you want to do with it. So that's really the basis of this module. Is when you're actually starting to do this, you will need to create a hub. Most of you are probably individual developers, so your hub will be your hub. Your project is going to be your hub, your project. But if you're working this as a project team or you're working on the AI Hackathon that's taking place, you might need to add other people into that project, but not give them access to your entire hub. So when we look at creating these managements and resources, we need to look at how the structure of these services are based and where do they live. So first of all, we have access to the Azure AI services. So this includes the foundational tools like Azure OpenAI and all the other different AI services that you're going to need to utilize in your project. So things like, the custom vision, it might be speech services, it might be Azure Search. You're then going to need something called Key Vault Security. So Key Vault Security is where we would store all our sensitive information. So things like the passwords, the security keys are all stored within Key Vault. And these are critical steps to making your project secure. And again, from a developer's perspective, this is built and configured for you when you create your hub and projects within AI Foundry. You don't have to think about these. These are actually created for you. You then have a storage account, and the storage account is where all your data will live for that project. So this includes things like files, this includes your Azure search, this includes any databases that you might want to access. And then finally, we have this thing called role-based access management control, or RBAC. And this is really the way we align to adding other people into your project. So you can actually say, you know, I want Song to have access to this, this, and this service. I can give them RBAC permissions to only access those resources or not to access those resources. So Song, do you want to talk about creating and managing resources in the hub?
I think it's enough for you of your description, but
cool. Okay.
Yes. I think what I want to say is role-based access management. I think this lets you centrally control who has access to what across your hub and project, making collaboration secure and streamlined. And that's it. Now,
cool. Do you want to carry on?
Okay, let's start from security and authorization, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Lee. Now let's move into one of the most important aspects of any development environment, security and authorization. In Azure AI Foundry, role-based access control is applied at two different levels, the hub and project. You can think of a hub like a shared workspace or department. It's where we manage shared resources like Azure OpenAI, storage accounts, and key vaults, and etc. At the hub level, we have three main roles. As you can see, the first is the owner. The person has full control. They can create new hubs and manage permissions and configure shared resources. Next, the contributor. They can create hubs and build solutions, but they can't manage who gets access. And finally, the reader. This is a view-only role. They can make changes, but it's useful for auditing or compliance checks. Now let's zoom into the project level, which is where most of the actual development happens. Projects are where we create and deploy models, manage prompt flows, and configure things specific to one AI solution. There are four roles here. The owner has full control over the project, just like at the hub level, including the ability to manage permissions. And the contributor can build and deploy things, but again, they can't change access settings. And the Azure AI developer is a specialized role. They can deploy models and manage configurations, but they don't have any permission management right. And finally, the reader, just like before, is limited to read-only access, which is perfect for stakeholders or reviewers. One important thing to remember here is this: even if someone is an owner at the hub level, they won't automatically have access to a project inside that hub. You still need to assign them into the project separately. Now that we've covered how access works, I hand it over to Lee to show us developer tooling side of things.
Cool, thanks, Song. So yeah, let's talk about, the developer tools and SDKs. So if you're a developer, you're going to be building things with the Visual Studio Code and what we call the Azure AI Foundry SDK. The most important thing about the Azure AI Foundry SDK is this is what we call a universal SDK. So again, it's not dependent on the model that you utilize. So if you look at some of the models, they have specific SDKs and APIs. what we've done with Microsoft is create this universal API, so you can simply call the model name that you require without having to change any other code within your solution. Some of the key things that we want to focus on around the deployment of models is things like container images. So you'll hear a lot about containerization of applications. So this is the ability to wrap your application in what we call an Azure container image and deploy that to a service. So things like Azure Functions or a web app to then be able to utilize that service. We've then got development environment setups utilizing container services. So if anybody's utilized Visual Studio Code Spaces or the dev container environment, this is a purpose-built container which has all the pre-configurations that you need to get building and utilizing the solution in a container setup. And then the final one is really around the cost consideration. So when using Visual Studio images, it's really essential to plan for any compute cost quotas. So you might find some images require GPU and you don't have a GPU machine, and you'll have to utilize a VM or a container image to host that GPU-based service. So again, there will be additional costs that you need to think about in terms of the technologies and resources that you provide. Again, as users, we hope you're all using GitHub for your source control, and we hope you're using GitHub Copilot to actually do your your actual code development. Copilot isn't, it's an assistive agent, it's an assistive service. It's not going to create you a full solution without you giving it a good prompt and understanding prompt engineering, and it will really help you get started. Again, in terms of programming languages and support, Microsoft has a vast array of support. So we support all the common programming languages and provide samples for those languages. So C#, Python, Node, TypeScript, Java. Again, we have the Foundry SDK, which is available to all those different languages, and other SDKs available to support you in that development process using your language of choice. Now, as I said, the key aspect about any of these solutions is responsible AI. And somebody's asked the question, do you support Rust? So we do have some Go and some Rust support within some of these SDKs. Again, you will have to look at specific samples around those. In terms of our Microsoft official docs, you won't find much reference directly to Rust, but in some of the Azure sample repos, there is some specific Rust samples. So please do look at the GitHub, Microsoft, and GitHub Azure samples for specifics. Now, in terms of responsible AI, this is really a key aspect of how Microsoft is making sure that we are both responsible and trustworthy as an AI provider. So we have these key solid pillars around how we look at every solution. So number one, any AI solution that's implemented needs to be fair. It needs to have fairness built into it. We have to have reliability and safety built into those systems. So we talked about before in terms of those content filters, the jailbreaking, etc. All our solutions are private and secure. So if you're hosting something within your Azure subscription, it's private and secure to you and your organization. And again, based on those role-based access controls on the individuals that you give access to. Again, inclusivity. We want AI solutions to be as inclusive as possible. So when you're building and deploying these solutions, we want you to think about that inclusivity of that solution. And again, if you're building any AI solutions, they should be transparent in terms of how AI is used. Again, transparent in terms of the data that you've used in your AI solution. And that then gives you as an organization some accountability into how that AI solution has been done. So again, going back to what we showed before around evaluations and monitoring and metrics, is you can start to provide information back to anybody who questions you about how you did this. And again, somebody's put in the question as well, ISO 27001, it gives you those internal documents and policies and processes that need to be followed to then prove that your organization has ISO 27001. So we try and provide you with all those resources to ensure that you're compliant. So what we're going to do is go into a demo, and Song's going to show you, around Azure AI Services and the Azure AI Foundry and how to get started on your first project.
Thanks, Lee. Now let's jump into the Azure AI Foundry portal and see how everything we've talked about comes together in a real workspace. The first, so here, can you see this page? So here we are on the Azure AI Foundry landing page. This is the first page you will see when you sign into Azure AI Foundry. It gives you a quick overview of your all projects along with their creation date, region, and the hub they belong to. And as you can see here, every project is a part of Hub, which acts like a central workspace that manages shared resources, access, and collaboration for your teams. And let's click Create Project. As you can see, here you can give your project a name, then either select an existing hub or create new one if you're starting fresh. But to save time, I've already created a hub and project ahead of this session, so let's jump right into that and take a closer look. Here it is. Now let's take a closer look at the Management Center, which you can find at the bottom of the navigation pane on the left. This page is organized into two main sections. The upper section shows everything related to your hub, and the lower section is for focuses on your specific project. So now let's take a look at the connected resources for this project. Connected resources. This section shows all the Azure services that are currently linked to this project, like Azure OpenAI, AI Services, and Blob Storage. You can see details like the resource type, access method, and who added them. And if I want to connect more services, I can just click New Connection at the top. So for me, Azure AI Computer Vision, as you can see, I previously created an Azure AI Vision resources for using Coop Translator, and it's available here for me to connect. So I don't need to recreate it from scratch. Now let's click on Go to Project to jump back into our project repo, project page. From here, I want to show you a really cool part of Azure AI Foundry, where you can actually try out Azure AI Services directly in the portal. So now let's click on Language Plus Translator. And in this page, I'm going to translate some Korean sentence. Set target language as English. So let's go with 요즘. Okay, this is Korean words. 요즘 날씨가 참 좋네요. Which means the weather is very nice these days. Once I hit translate, okay, you can see it returns the correct English version like this. The weather is very nice these days. Pretty accurate, right? This is a great way to test Azure AI services directly without writing any code. It's perfect for quick experiments or prototyping use cases like multilingual apps or content localization. Now, to save time today, I won't walk through that demo step by step, especially in how to use model catalog and playgrounds. But in this page, you can directly deploy models from the model catalog page, and you can easily test the large language models like GPT-4o in the playgrounds. That wraps up our quick tour of Azure AI Foundry portal. Now let's see what you've learned. Lee, back to you for a quick quiz.
Cool, thanks, Song. So as Song said, we now showed you what the Azure AI Foundry was, how to utilize it, some examples. I've also put in a link to Song's repo that he maintains, the Co-op Translator. This solution's been built to allow you to translate any GitHub repo into 20 languages. It uses all of the AI Foundry services. Well, not all of the AI Foundry services. It uses a lot of the AI Foundry services. So it utilizes custom computer vision to analyze images. It uses our GPT models to do the translation of the markdown text. It then imposes GPT translations onto images so that you get a full translated image which has stateful preservations of space in the new format. So again, this is a great example of how you can build these multimodal solutions with generative AI. So let's go on to the quiz. So our first question for you is, which Azure resource provides language and vision services from a single endpoint? Is it Azure AI Language? Is it Azure AI Vision? Or is it Azure AI Services? If you want to put your answers into the chat, we'll leave that open for a second and then we'll tell you what the right answer is. So people saying B, so Azure AI Vision, people saying C. We've got a few people saying C. Lots of people now saying C, which is great. Awesome. It looks like everybody's been listening to a song, which is really good. Thank you, everybody, for actually listening to us. And the correct answer is C. So yeah, you're all correct if you said Azure AI Services. So what was our vision services? So they were previously known as cognitive services, all now live within Azure AI Services within the Azure AI Foundry. So thank you for everyone taking part in this. So let's just do a quick wrap up. So conclusion, we've talked about powerful AI tools. Most importantly, Azure AI provides robust tools. It enables you as a developer to really start to create intelligent applications efficiently and effectively. And again, as we go through the rest of this series, we want you to start to actually get playing with this. Today's been about how to set up the basics. It's about creating intelligent applications. That's what we want you to do. We want you to build intelligent applications, but understand those understand the fundamentals of what services and tools you have available as developers to build these solutions. And we also want you to build responsible AI solutions. It's just because we can build this today, as a developer, you should be saying, should I be building this today? What benefit is this going to have? So how does it relate back to those responsible AI fundamentals of trustworthy, accountability, transparency? Am I building an AI solution for good, or am I building AI solutions for the wrong reason? So as we move forward through this session, we really want you to think about, what's coming next. And this is really around the next episodes in this series. So we're going to be next week, we're going to be talking about the fundamentals of agents. What is an agent? Why should you build an agent? How do you start building an agent? On the 29th, we're going to talk about how to actually start to build agents with the Azure AI Agent Service. So how to actually get started building your first agent. On the 6th of May, we're going to be talking about integrating custom tools into your agent solution. And that should be the 8th of May, not 8th of April. It's develop AI agents with semantic kernel SDK. So how do you start to build it and incorporate further extensions and tooling and calling using semantic kernel? And our final episode on the 13th of May is going to be about how we start to join these agents together. So we have multiple agents in a multi-agent solution. So if you're interested in this series, please register at the URL. All these sessions will be made available on demand. And again, we do have a Microsoft AI Discord channel that we'd love you all to join to carry on your discussions around these solutions and these technology areas. And also, really start to ask some deep questions and thoughtful questions about how you can use AI to build modern day solutions. So finally, we just really like to say, we hope you've enjoyed today's session. If you do have any interest and you want to join more of these AI Skills Fest sessions, please register AI Skills Fest. Please make sure you do download your digital badge. You've done one of these activities with us around these solutions. So again, please do get your digital badge. We want you to show off your credentials. So again, if you take these learning journeys, you will get digital badges for doing each of these Microsoft Learn modules, which you'll be able to share. You'll get a learning transcript as well. And again, please do continue the learning journey. Finally, we actually have an AI hackathon taking place now. So we have the AI Agents Hack, which started on the 8th of April. It's going all the way through to the 30th of April. There is a prize fund of $25,000. So if you're interested in building amazing agent solutions, join that event. We do have specialized webinars and technical deep sessions. So we start like beginner level like this one, go all the way through to super advanced level for those hardcore developers who want to build amazing agent solutions. So please do check that out. Have a look at those resources. So Sung, any final words from you?
Oh, thank you for. I really enjoyed it. While I'm giving a presentation, I really enjoyed it. Listening the presentation that you're giving.
No, honestly, and thank you for everybody who's joined today's session.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, honestly,
Oh,
we hope you've all enjoyed it, and please all have a great day, and thank you for coming along.
Thank you, everyone.